The best advice that I was given is to never set limits. Never set limits on what you want or your goals. If you set limits on yourself, you're going to cut yourself off to where you can go and what you can achieve. Even if it seems far-fetched, even if it seems unattainable, always write it down and continue to strive for it, because you never know, you might get it, or you might get something facsimile of it or something near it. And I would set it high, set it pretty high, because you have no idea what you're capable of until you set on that path. So I was told a long time ago to never put a limit on your goals, never put a limit on what you feel like you can or want to achieve. This is Carey Jones, special makeup effects supervisor for HBO's Lovecraft Country. And this is from Script to Screen, a masterclass. Now, many times you might look at a show and wonder how they do that. Whether it's a bullet wound or aging someone, making someone young look old. Well, that's a special makeup effects artist. We make things that seem impossible possible on screen. A special effects makeup artist, in the easiest way, is a magician. They sometimes create the impossible and put it on screen. If it's a matter of aging someone who is young, we make prosthetics for that are glued to the actor's face that changes the shape of their face, their skin texture. Sometimes it could be changing their body shape. The scope of what we're asked to do is endless. In terms of Lovecraft Country, we're special effects makeup artists, but we created animatronic animals. We created an animatronic cow, an animatronic goat. We also created a bullet wound gag, a bleeding bullet wound. We've also created wound prosthetics. We also created fake limbs. We've created creatures. There's so many things that we've asked to do on Lovecraft Country that allowed us to dig deep into our bag of tricks for everything that a makeup effects artist does. So anytime you look at a movie and you see someone that has a wound or turns into a creature, or sometimes it's realistic injuries like a broken arm, all that stuff falls into our world. There are a lot of tools nowadays that I like to use in order to further my craft. Digital media has become an integral part, whether it's utilizing it for design, utilizing it for 3D printing, for instance, or even digital sculpting for presentations. It's something that has definitely augmented how we can present what we can do to producers, directors around the industry. It's definitely a mainstay. Now, I'm very much a fan of the old school tactics in terms of hands-on. I'm still a huge fan of sculpting and pushing clay around on live casts or even drawing on paper. A lot of times, even still, that's where we'll start. We'll start with paper and drawing on, two-dimensional art on paper with just pencil sketches, and then that gets translated into computer art. But I think that new products and new technology has definitely helped accelerate, and in some ways it has helped kind of shorten the time frames with some of the things that we do, just so that we can get to the stuff that takes more time. So I think that's also something that I would recommend is to embrace certain technologies to further your craft. I think that's just the way things are going, and it's something that if used correctly can definitely be a great tool in your toolbox. So the process after we get a script and we read it and we get the information from the writer-director is in terms of prosthetic goes, is to take a live cast. We meet the actor usually for the first time. We figure out what their interests are and what their experience are in terms of prosthetic goes. And they come to our studio, and we have a team of guys, usually 3, that sit the actor down and then do what we call a live cast. And what a live cast is exactly that. We're taking a cast of their face as it is in life. This happens to be a live cast of me. And when we get this live cast, this one is cast out of plaster. The next step would be to create the prosthetic three-dimensionally on the live cast with clay. And we push the clay on here and we create what we call a sculpture of the prosthetic. And then when that sculpture is done, we present that to the director, writer, producers, and they look at it and they tell us, now that they're able to see it three-dimensionally in person, they ultimately most times want to make changes. So whether it's, you know, a nose is too big or a chin is too small, we make those adjustments in clay. Once that clay sculpture is approved, we go through a process called mold making. And what mold making is that you're essentially taking a negative impression or a negative cast off of that clay sculpture. Then that clay is cleaned out of that mold, it's separated, and then different materials can be injected inside of it. We use a material called foam latex. It's a version of foam that could be in a sofa seat, but we mix it, it goes into the oven, it gets baked out for a few hours, and it comes out, and it's a soft, pliable piece that is glued to the actor's face. Or we use a material called silicone, like this, which we use this material because you can change the softness of it. It could be you know, stiffer or kind of more pliable, such as this one. And when the actor moves around, you can it feels more lifelike. And that is used the same way. It's glued onto the actor, it's blended, it's painted so that the seams disappear, and that's the final product. We test at least 2 to 3 times before we put it on camera, just to make sure there's nothing that we've missed, and again, so that the writer and director are happy with what the final product looks like. And then we get it on camera. And when we're on camera, you still have to make some adjustments. There are different types of cameras, different types of film that's used, and sometimes that can create different color variances. There's certain cameras that make colors seem more red. There's certain cameras that make colors seem more yellow. So you still have to go in and make those adjustments once you see it in front of the camera, which usually happens on set. And a lot of times you have to work with camera operators and lighting people just to make sure the camera's set in a specific way, to make sure it's not giving away the gag, or the prosthetic is shown in the correct way, or the lighting is not in a way where it creates a shadow on the face to, again, show things you don't want to see. When we finally make sure that we have something that they like, testing is key. You have to make sure that you vet all the possibilities of things that potentially go wrong before you show up on set. So what we like to do is what we call an internal test. So in our shop, we'll do the makeup or do the gag or put whatever it is together so that we can best see how it's going to look and what it's going to do on the day, and hopefully weed out any sort of issues that we may have, so that when we're shooting it, we figured out anything that could potentially go wrong, and limit, you know, the issues that we would have. So testing is key. You know, sometimes we do 2 to 3 tests depending upon what and how intricate it is. But for the most part, after we do that in the shop, we'll then do another test that we'll present to directors and producers so that they can then see it as well and sign off on it. Because ultimately they may want to change it now that they can see it in, you know, 3-dimensional and on the actor's face or in person. So that allows us to take time to, you know, vet those ideas, you know, and then go back and then make whatever changes we need to make. So there is a lot of time that we call prep time. From the time that we kind of get the project, look at the script, and then bring it to camera, depending upon the complexity of what we're making, it could be anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe 8 weeks. So there's a long lead time and process that happens there. It certainly doesn't happen overnight. Once you're on set, it's very important that everyone else is on board to what you're creating as well. You have things like lighting that can have a really adverse effect on what you're trying to create. If it's a side light or up light or anywhere that would come across that would kind of create weird shadows or things, especially with prosthetics, that would give away the effect or the magic trick that we're trying to create. So it's very important that you collaborate with lighting and also directors of photography, because again, depending upon where they want to set up their cameras, you have to rotate your effect or prosthetic in a way to show it the best to sell the idea. And of course, you have, sometimes even sound, if they have to hide a microphone, things like that. Sometimes we have to be prepared for that, or where they need to put a microphone. In wardrobe is very important, because sometimes wardrobe helps us if there's a seam that we have to hide or an edge that we have to hide, especially when it comes to any sort of body prosthetics or suit work. They can help us out. And sometimes we don't have to overbuild something that you won't see that would be hidden behind wardrobe or a shirt or shoes or whatever that effect is going to be. So there's a lot of people that we have to coordinate with on set to make sure that we're delivering the best possible effect, and it is essentially what was asked for. And so friendships and relationships is very, very important. One of the things that I pride myself on is that I do try to take time to listen in and pay attention to what other people do in terms of their other jobs on set, because it's not just prosthetics and makeup effects. It's what you do will affect everyone's job. So I always try to listen to other people and to understand what they do and pay attention and be a fly on the wall sometimes, even though it necessarily may not affect me directly. I always try to listen, which I think is one thing that I always like to express when people ask me about what I do. Learning and teaching is very, very important. Everything's created from the shop. We're on set. We're ready for camera. You have to be ready to make any adjustments, because certain cameras create certain color values that may change. Lighting also can have an effect on your paint job sometimes, or even effect. So you have to be prepared to make adjustments, because inevitably they will happen. And it's not necessarily being perfect, but it's also you're a problem solver most of the time, because you're gonna have things that come up and you have to be prepared and understand how to work with the flow and make those corrections as they come. The camera's rolling and we're on set with a giant cow, which sounds weird, but we had to make one for an episode of Lovecraft Country. The question was asked in the meeting, how do we make a cow give birth? Well, you come to SPFX and we create a full-size practical cow, and we create a way to pull a infant out of it. So we started off with creating a full-size sculpture of a cow, which we molded, and we had a team that did a sculpture of a head and hair department that flocked individual hairs over the whole thing. There were mechanics in it. The head moved. The body could breathe. And as you're shooting, sometimes things come up. Again, it's problem solving. So in this particular instance, they wanted additional movements that the cow didn't have. So then we partnered with the visual effects team that were able to add little touches to it to bring it to life, like an eye blink or an ear twitch, little things like that. And again, it's collaborative efforts that we had between our department and the visual effects department. So again, if there's certain things that needed to get pushed a little bit further, they were there to help us out. But the Cal took a team of 3 puppeteers, another team of PAs and everything to lift it and move it around, put it in place. We had to work with the camera operator to figure out what angle shots he wanted to do so that the puppeteers could be off screen. The lighting department to make sure that where they put that light made it look as real as possible. And sometimes if there's a shine on the cow, or if there's areas that we have to add dirt to mat it down to look right to camera, or set dressing. After we moved the cow in place, they had to essentially get rid of our footsteps and put hay where we were standing, or we had cables that were visible depending upon where the camera was sitting. So we had to have set deck go in and start covering our cables. So there was a crowd of us just running around this thing, to set this up and to get the correct shot. And then we had an actor that had to be comfortable with being near the cow or digging inside of it or doing what she needed to do. So just that one shot took hours to get from different angles, and also just between making the transition between the real cow they had on set to our animatronic cow took a lot of work. I mean, I think the end product was seamless. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know how we did it, which is what we want. We wanted you to be fooled. We want you to ask that question: how was that done? But yeah, that's one of the things that you want the end result to be. You want whoever's viewing it to not know how it's done. And a lot of times it is mixed media. It's between what we call practical effects or digital visual effects. But whether it's us or others, bringing things together to make it look real, the ultimate goal is to fool the audience. The trajectory of entering the industry and then ultimately becoming a supervisor like I am now, it's a varied path. I think the best path to take is to start from scratch, from the lowest rung. And that way you're moving through and you're understanding every step that it takes to get to the final product. And I think that's, as a supervisor, you're looking over essentially everyone, and you need to know what everyone else's job is. And the way you get there is to not skip a step, is to step on every rung up that ladder, so that when you are asked a question, you can recall back to an experience that you had doing that specific task. If you are asked, how is a sculpture done, or how is a mold created, or how is something fabricated, you don't know that information other than experience it or having that job. So that was probably one of the main ways that I would suggest to become a supervisor is to, again, take that path, learn those stages and become proficient in each one as you go. And eventually you will get there. You will become a supervisor. In order to make yourself visible by people that might be in a position that you want to reach, I think it's all about content. It's all about learning your craft, and it will come. It's almost the laws of attraction. The more work that you do, the more body of work that you do, eventually it will come. People will seek you out. People will find you. If you have that level of content, whether it is doing your own work and posting it on your media site, or just working and collectively getting jobs, you will meet people that will see what you're doing and have confidence in you. And then that person will then refer you to another person, which will then refer you to another person. And it is basically relationships. Talk to everyone. Every situation could lead to a better one. So it's very important that you take every job that you do and every scenario that you have, you make that important during the time that you're doing it, because you have no idea what it could lead to. But it's always content, it's always learning your craft, it's always doing it at some point, no matter what. Never stop. Try to do some work or something that has to do with where you want to be every day, whether it's drawing or even if it's writing, or being creative in some way, shape, or form, or sculpting or painting, even for yourself, and posting that art on your media site is imperative. In terms of myself, I think I come in very humble. I don't feel like I know everything, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that maybe newcomers might have entering the field. You never know everything. You don't. And in fact, I think the moment you think that you do, you stop learning. And I think that it's always important to continue learning, and continue learning from whomever you can. I have great mentors. Greg Nicotero is one, the owner of SPFX, and Howard Berger. Every day I watch these two guys work and build and do amazing work. And I am a fly on the wall just watching what they do and continue to learn from them. And I think that finding someone like a mentor, someone that you want to kind of set a goal to become in terms of what they've achieved with their career, I think that's important. I think having someone that you can look to or ask questions and who can guide you if you've lost your way is very important. I think most people may not want to admit it, but I think a lot of people have gotten to where they are because of that, because of others that have seen their talent and have given them opportunities. I would not be here if it wasn't for someone seeing something in me and giving me an opportunity. And I would love to then pay it forward to someone else, as it has been to me. So it's very important to be humble. It's very important to never stop learning and to not feel like you know everything, because you don't. No one does. And the moment you understand that, the limit to where you can go and where you will go, it will be limitless. It will open so many doors, because you'll start looking for things and seeing things that you maybe haven't been looking for if you constantly are trying to find more information and more things to kind of absorb. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you were educated, and hopefully you were inspired to become a makeup effects artist. Watch Lovecraft Country on Sundays, HBO or HBO Max. Share, subscribe, or comment. Hope to see you again soon.